Hello everyone, and welcome to our first lecture on the Common Technical Document Structure for Investigational New Drug Applications. I'm Professor Peivand Pirouzi, and today we're going to dive deep into CTD Module 1. Now, Module 1 is particularly interesting because it's the only region-specific module in the entire CTD framework. While Modules 2 through 5 are harmonized internationally across the ICH regions, Module 1 contains administrative information that's unique to each regulatory authority. For the FDA, this module is absolutely critical because it sets the administrative foundation for your entire IND application. Think of Module 1 as the front door to your submission. It's where the FDA first engages with your application, and it needs to be impeccable. A well-organized Module 1 can facilitate a smooth review process, while a poorly prepared one can lead to delays and unnecessary back and forth with the agency. In this lecture, we'll walk through each section of Module 1, understand what documents are required, and discuss best practices for preparing them. By the end of this session, you'll have a clear roadmap for assembling this critical component of your IND submission. Let's begin with an overview of Module 1. As I mentioned, this module is unique in the CTD structure because it's the only one that varies by region. The Common Technical Document was developed by the International Council for Harmonization, or ICH, to create a unified format for drug submissions across major regulatory authorities. However, each region has its own administrative requirements that simply couldn't be harmonized. For the United States, Module 1 contains FDA-specific documents and forms. The European Medicines Agency has its own version with different administrative requirements, and Japan's PMDA has yet another set of requirements. So if you're filing globally, you'll need to prepare different Module 1 packages for each region while Modules 2 through 5 remain essentially the same. What makes Module 1 so important? It's your first point of contact with the FDA. Before reviewers ever look at your non-clinical data or clinical protocols, they're going to see Module 1. This module tells them who you are, what you're submitting, and sets the administrative framework for the entire review process. The quality and organization of Module 1 sets the tone for how the FDA perceives your submission. Now let's look at the structure of Module 1 for an IND application. The module is divided into several major sections, and I want you to understand that not all sections are required for every type of submission. Section 1.1 contains your forms and cover letters. This is where you'll include Form FDA 1571 and your cover letter to the FDA. Section 1.2 is your table of contents, which provides a roadmap to your entire submission. Section 1.3 houses administrative information, and this is a substantial section that includes items like patent information, exclusivity claims, and licensing agreements. Section 1.4 is for references, but this section is typically not used for IND applications. It becomes relevant for marketing applications like NDAs. Section 1.5 addresses application integrity and includes information about your company's compliance history with FDA regulations. And Section 1.6 contains regional administrative information specific to the FDA's requirements. Each of these sections has specific subsections, and we're going to go through the most important ones in detail. Form FDA 1571 is the cornerstone of your IND application. This is the official application form, and without a properly completed 1571, your IND simply won't be accepted by the FDA. The form serves several critical functions. First, it identifies who you are as the sponsor. This seems straightforward, but remember that the sponsor is the entity taking legal responsibility for the clinical investigation. This could be a pharmaceutical company, a biotech startup, or even an individual investigator. Second, the form identifies the drug you're studying. You'll need to provide the chemical name, code name, and proposed proprietary name if you have one. Third, and this is crucial, the form lists all the clinical investigators who will be participating in your studies. Each investigator needs to have a complete FDA Form 1572 on file, which we'll discuss shortly. The 1571 also contains several binding commitments that the sponsor must make. By signing this form, you're committing to comply with all applicable regulations, to not begin clinical investigations until the IND goes into effect, and to submit required reports and amendments. One common mistake I see is sponsors treating this form as a mere formality. Don't do that. Read every word carefully. Understand what you're committing to. The FDA takes these commitments very seriously, and violations can have significant consequences. For each clinical investigator participating in your IND studies, you'll need a completed FDA Form 1572, known as the Statement of Investigator. This form establishes the qualifications and commitments of each investigator. The form requires the investigator to provide their curriculum vitae, which documents their training and experience. Remember, the FDA wants to know that the people conducting clinical trials have the appropriate qualifications. A poorly qualified investigator can jeopardize not just the study, but your entire development program. The 1572 also lists the facilities where the clinical work will be conducted and identifies any sub-investigators who will be assisting with the study. This is important for FDA inspections, as they need to know exactly where the work is being done and by whom. Perhaps most importantly, the Form 1572 contains a series of commitments from the investigator. These include commitments to personally conduct or supervise the trial, to obtain informed consent from subjects, to report adverse experiences appropriately, and to maintain adequate records. I want to emphasize something here: the investigator is personally signing this form and taking on these commitments. It's not just paperwork, it's a legal document with real consequences. As a sponsor, you need to ensure your investigators understand what they're signing and are prepared to fulfill these obligations. Your cover letter might seem like a simple formality, but I encourage you to think of it as a strategic communication with the FDA. A well-crafted cover letter can help guide the reviewer's attention and set appropriate expectations. The cover letter should clearly identify what you're submitting. Is this an initial IND application? A protocol amendment? An annual report? Be explicit about this because the FDA receives thousands of submissions and clarity helps them route your submission correctly. Use the cover letter to summarize the key aspects of your submission. If you're submitting an initial IND, briefly describe the drug, the proposed indication, and the type of clinical study you're planning. If it's an amendment, clearly explain what's being changed and why. This is also your opportunity to highlight anything that requires special attention. Maybe you're requesting a pre-IND meeting. Perhaps there's an urgent safety issue that needs immediate review. Or maybe you have a novel delivery mechanism that you want to draw attention to. The cover letter is the place to flag these items. Always include complete contact information for the sponsor's point of contact. When FDA reviewers have questions, and they will, you want to make it easy for them to reach the right person quickly. A delayed response to an FDA query can delay your entire program. The table of contents in Section 1.2 serves as the roadmap for your entire submission. In the electronic CTD format, this becomes particularly important because reviewers will use it to navigate through what can be thousands of pages of documentation. Your TOC needs to be comprehensive. Every document in your submission should be listed and easily locatable. In the eCTD format, this means following the established granularity requirements, which specify exactly how documents should be organized and labeled within the folder structure. One of the advantages of the eCTD format is electronic hyperlinking. Your TOC should contain working hyperlinks that allow reviewers to click directly to any document or section they need. This might seem like a technical detail, but it significantly impacts the review experience. A reviewer who can easily navigate your submission is a happy reviewer. The TOC should cover all 5 modules of the CTD. Even though Module 1 is region-specific, the TOC provides an overview of the entire submission. This helps reviewers understand the scope of what you've submitted and plan their review accordingly. I've seen submissions where the TOC was poorly organized or out of sync with the actual documents. This creates frustration for reviewers and can delay your review. Invest the time to get this right, and update it whenever you make amendments to ensure it stays accurate. Section 1.3.1 contains contact information for the sponsor and key personnel. This might seem straightforward, but getting it right is essential for smooth communication with the FDA. For the sponsor, you'll need to provide complete company information including the legal name, physical address, phone numbers, and email addresses. If there's a specific regulatory affairs contact, include their information as well. If you're a foreign sponsor, meaning your company is based outside the United States, you must designate a U.S. agent. This is a legal requirement. The U.S. agent is your representative in the United States and serves as the FDA's point of contact for all communications. Choose this agent carefully because they need to be responsive and knowledgeable about your program. Emergency contact information is particularly important. Clinical trials can have unexpected safety events at any hour, and the FDA needs to know how to reach you quickly if there's an urgent issue. This typically includes 24-hour contact numbers and may involve multiple contacts to ensure coverage. You should also include contact information for your manufacturing sites. While the main sponsor contact handles most communications, manufacturing-related queries may need to go directly to the appropriate facility. Make sure this information is current and accurate. Section 1.3.2 covers the administrative details that help the FDA track and manage your application through their systems. This includes various identifiers and cross-references that link your IND to other relevant submissions. Every drug product should have unique identifiers that the FDA can use for tracking. This includes any IND numbers you've already been assigned, and if you have multiple INDs or other submissions, those numbers should be listed for cross-reference. Cross-references are particularly important if you're relying on data that's already been submitted to the FDA. For example, if you have a drug master file on file with the FDA that contains confidential manufacturing information, you would cross-reference that DMF number here. Or if there's been a pre-IND meeting that generated relevant FDA feedback, that should be referenced. Include your regulatory history with the agency. Has this drug been the subject of previous IND applications? Were there any FDA meetings or correspondence that's relevant to this submission? Providing this history helps reviewers understand the context of your current application. For lifecycle management, think about how this IND fits into your broader development program. Are you planning additional INDs? Is this a precursor to an eventual NDA submission? While you don't need to provide exhaustive details, giving the FDA a sense of your development trajectory can be helpful. Financial disclosure requirements exist to protect the integrity of clinical trial data. The FDA wants to ensure that financial interests don't bias study outcomes, and this section addresses those concerns. Under 21 CFR Part 54, sponsors must collect and disclose certain financial information about clinical investigators. This includes any significant equity interest in the sponsor, any proprietary interest in the product being tested, and any significant payments made to the investigator beyond the costs of conducting the study. There are 2 forms used for financial disclosure. Form FDA 3454 is a certification that can be used when investigators have no disclosable financial interests. Form FDA 3455 is used when there are financial arrangements that must be disclosed. Most sponsors will end up using a combination of both forms across their investigator pool. Why does this matter? Financial conflicts of interest can, consciously or unconsciously, influence how investigators conduct studies and interpret results. A researcher who owns significant stock in the sponsor might be motivated to report positive findings. The FDA wants to be aware of these potential biases when evaluating the submitted data. I want to emphasize that having disclosable financial interests doesn't automatically disqualify an investigator or invalidate data. The FDA will consider the nature and magnitude of the interest and assess whether it could have influenced the results. Transparency is the key. Patent information in Module 1 becomes much more significant when you move from IND to NDA, but let me explain why it's included here and when it might be relevant during the IND phase. For new drug applications, patent information is critical because it determines when generic competitors can enter the market. The FDA's Orange Book lists all approved drugs along with their patent protection, and applicants must make certifications regarding these patents. During the IND phase, patent considerations are generally less pressing from a regulatory perspective. The FDA isn't going to approve your drug for marketing during the IND phase, so the competitive dynamics that drive patent concerns aren't yet in play. However, there are scenarios where patent information becomes relevant even at the IND stage. If your drug is based on a licensed technology, there may be patent terms that affect your development timeline. Or if you're developing a product that might compete with an existing patented drug, you'll want to understand those implications. My advice is to work closely with your intellectual property counsel throughout development. Patent strategy should be integrated with your regulatory strategy. While the FDA isn't primarily concerned with patents during IND review, the decisions you make now will affect your options when you reach the NDA stage. Section 1.3.5 addresses compliance history, which relates to the FDA's application integrity policy and debarment regulations. This is about ensuring that people and companies with problematic regulatory histories don't participate in drug development. The FDA maintains a list of individuals and companies that have been debarred from participating in drug applications. This typically happens after serious violations of FDA regulations, such as fraud in clinical trials or significant manufacturing violations. Sponsors must certify that they have not used the services of any debarred individuals or companies. The application integrity policy goes beyond formal debarment. It addresses situations where there have been questions about data integrity in previous submissions. If your company or key personnel have been involved in submissions where data integrity was questioned, you may need to address this proactively. Every clinical investigator signs FDA Form 1572, which includes declarations about their qualifications and compliance with FDA regulations. As a sponsor, you should verify that your investigators are in good standing and haven't been subject to FDA enforcement actions. If your company has been subject to any consent decrees, warning letters, or other regulatory actions, consider whether these need to be disclosed. Transparency here is important because the FDA will likely already be aware of significant actions, and failing to disclose them could raise questions about your credibility. Section 1.4 is designated for references, but its use in IND applications is limited. Let me explain what this section is designed for and when you might need it. In marketing applications like NDAs, sponsors often rely on data that has been submitted by others. This could be published literature, data from other approved drugs, or information held in drug master files. Section 1.4 is where these references would be documented. Drug master files are particularly relevant here. A DMF is a submission to the FDA that contains confidential detailed information about facilities, processes, or articles used in the manufacturing, processing, packaging, and storing of drugs. API manufacturers often maintain DMFs, and sponsors can reference them in their INDs rather than duplicating all that information. If you're referencing a DMF, you'll need a letter of authorization from the DMF holder. This letter authorizes the FDA to review the relevant portions of the DMF in support of your application. Without this authorization, the FDA won't look at the DMF. For initial IND applications, you may not have many references to include here. As your program develops and you move toward the NDA phase, this section will become more populated. Keep good records of any references you might want to rely on later. Environmental assessment requirements come from 21 CFR Part 25, which implements the National Environmental Policy Act for FDA actions. The good news for most IND sponsors is that this requirement is often straightforward. The vast majority of IND applications qualify for a categorical exclusion from environmental assessment requirements. This means you don't need to prepare a full environmental assessment, you just need to claim the applicable exclusion and provide a brief justification. Categorical exclusions apply to actions that don't individually or cumulatively have a significant effect on the environment. For clinical trials, the drug quantities being manufactured and used are typically too small to have meaningful environmental impact. A simple claim of categorical exclusion with appropriate justification is usually sufficient. However, if your manufacturing process involves significant environmental considerations, or if you're producing at a scale that goes beyond typical IND requirements, you may need to think more carefully about environmental implications. This becomes increasingly important as you move toward commercial-scale manufacturing. For the NDA stage, environmental assessment requirements become more rigorous because you're seeking approval to market the drug widely. At that point, manufacturing volumes increase substantially, and the FDA will want to understand the environmental implications of that increased production. Let me share some best practices for preparing Module 1 that I've seen lead to successful submissions. First, start early. Don't wait until you're ready to submit the IND to think about Module 1. Many of these documents, like investigator qualifications and financial disclosures, need to be collected over time. Starting early gives you time to identify and address any issues. Second, maintain accurate documentation. Module 1 documents need to be current and accurate. Contact information changes. Investigators may change. Manufacturing sites may be added. Build systems to keep these documents up to date throughout your development program. Third, use standardized templates. The FDA provides templates for many required forms. Use them. For documents where templates don't exist, create your own internal templates to ensure consistency across submissions. Consistency makes review easier and reduces errors. Fourth, implement quality control. Every document in Module 1 should be reviewed for accuracy and completeness before submission. Cross-check forms against each other. Verify that signatures are complete. Ensure that all required attachments are included. Finally, engage regulatory affairs expertise. Module 1 might seem like straightforward paperwork, but there are nuances that can trip up inexperienced sponsors. Whether you have in-house regulatory affairs staff or work with consultants, make sure you have people who understand these requirements guiding your preparation. I want to spend a moment discussing common pitfalls I've seen in Module 1 submissions. Being aware of these can help you avoid them. Incomplete or missing signatures are surprisingly common. Form 1571 must be signed. Every Form 1572 must be signed by the investigator. Financial disclosure forms need signatures. Yet I regularly see submissions where signatures are missing. The FDA will refuse to file your IND if required signatures are absent. Outdated contact information creates problems when the FDA needs to reach you. People change positions. Companies move offices. Phone numbers change. If the FDA can't reach you, it creates delays. Keep this information current. Missing cross-references can cause problems when the FDA can't find information you're relying on. If you reference a DMF but don't include the letter of authorization, the FDA can't review it. If you reference a previous submission but don't provide the submission number, they can't locate it. Be thorough with your cross-references. Inconsistent information across documents raises red flags. If Form 1571 lists a different sponsor address than your cover letter, reviewers will wonder which is correct. If financial disclosure forms conflict with each other, it suggests poor attention to detail. Consistency matters. Finally, failure to update Module 1 after amendments is a common issue. When you add new investigators, their Forms 1572 and financial disclosures need to be submitted. When contact information changes, it needs to be updated. Module 1 isn't a static document, it evolves throughout your development program. Let's wrap up today's lecture with some key takeaways about CTD Module 1. Remember that Module 1 is the administrative foundation of your entire IND submission. While it doesn't contain scientific data about your drug's efficacy or safety, it provides the framework that makes the rest of your submission possible. Without a properly prepared Module 1, your IND won't move forward. The region-specific nature of Module 1 means you need to prepare content specifically for the FDA if you're submitting in the United States. The requirements we've discussed today are U.S. requirements. If you're also filing in Europe or Japan, you'll need to prepare different Module 1 content for those regions. Forms 1571 and 1572 are more than paperwork. They contain legally binding commitments from the sponsor and investigators. Make sure everyone who signs these forms understands what they're committing to. These aren't formalities, they're obligations with real consequences. Accuracy and completeness in Module 1 are non-negotiable. The FDA will check your forms, verify signatures, and review your administrative information. Errors and omissions here suggest carelessness that might extend to other parts of your submission. Get it right. Finally, remember that Module 1 sets the tone for the FDA's review of your entire submission. A well-organized, professional Module 1 creates a positive first impression. It tells the FDA that you're a competent sponsor who pays attention to details. That impression carries forward as they review the rest of your dossier. In our next lecture, we'll move to Module 2, which contains the summaries that bridge Module 1's administrative content with the detailed data in Modules 3 through 5. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you next time.